There's a very strong tradition and culture of talking and of pragmatism among Pashtuns, among people in southern Afghanistan, and people who have wanted to literally kill each other one day, and then the next day they'll sit down and talk together. We shouldn't underestimate this culture of pragmatic culture of needing to come to some kind of solution at some point. I think this revenge thing is often overstated.
Right here.
Thank you. Masood Aziz from Afghanistan, former diplomat. I appreciate very much your context, the context that you're providing about Kandahar, because that is an extremely important city, of course, the second largest city in Afghanistan, an extremely symbolic city compared to the capital itself, a historic city, and key now to, without turning around Kandahar, you cannot turn around the country and perhaps the region. So there's nothing better than actually living there and providing that context. I congratulate you on that, and I hope that more is going to come. I understand that you're working on this more. The timeline that you provided in regards to Zaeef, the Taliban, was interesting. Obviously, covering 1979 to 2010 in 5 minutes is hard to do, and you've done it. My suggestion, though, is that if you're talking about a timeline in relations to what is happening to Zaeef, you also want to put that in the context of the complexity of the issue, and that is that how the Taliban came to power, how they were supported, and how the Taliban failed themselves. Well, Zaeef was a major player, certainly he was not a decision maker in Afghanistan in terms of on the cultural basis, tribal basis that you mentioned, on even religious basis, and how in fact they were leveraged by Al-Qaeda in being utilized, and now the context of that reconciliation is important. I don't think I quite agree with you that there is not as much commonality between Al-Qaeda and Taliban. There is. If you discount 30 years of common work between the two, then I don't know, what is commonality. Certainly, they're not the same. They've never been the same. This is a local force, a regional force versus a global jihad. But their history and relationships go very deep in the past 30 years, and their cooperation go extremely deep. And of course, the role of Pakistan here is extremely important. So, absent some of that context, talking about just timeline for Zaeef sort of makes that timeline a bit less relevant. That's my only suggestion.
Let me just quickly reply to that comment again, since it's burning on my fingernails. 30 years, no. I think most of the Taliban leadership and Mullah brother, Mullah Omar, got to know Osama bin Laden in 1996 when he came down to Kandahar. Before that, they probably had zero to less understanding who these people are or what they're doing beyond rumors. Mullah, like Osama bin Laden, Abdullah Azam, and the Arab Afghans were very aligned with different people. If you talk to somebody like Haqqani, yeah, I would totally agree. These guys have been hanging out for a long time, and they share far more than in terms of their worldview. That there is no discussion on that front, and that Haqqani has a very close relationship to the Taliban currently, also agreed on. But the Quetta Shura, the southern guys, these people really not 30 years, and really a limited idea of what Al-Qaeda meant and what Osama bin Laden meant, even in the mid-90s. Even as the embassies were bombed, I have a really hard time seeing how they could have had that knowledge. And talking to various people, I mean, the interesting part we need to talk about, and that's something I can't answer, is the relationship of Mullah Omar and Osama. That is something we really should look into, because that's the killer.
That's what I'm mentioning.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I would like to get at least 2 more questions in. Yes.
Thank you. My name is Najib Sharifi, and I'm a Fulbright student from Afghanistan studying in the University of Maryland. I wanted you to talk a little bit on a different topic. I would like to ask you what activities is Ahmad Wali Karzai, brother of Karzai, is engaged in these days, and how is he perceived in Kandahar and in bigger Kandahar by people?
I'd probably respond to that by saying this is on the record, and there's a lot of things that we can't talk about, and that probably is a response to your question.
Yes,
Because we're going back in a couple of weeks.
We live
you
there,
know how Kandahar is, Najib.
and that speaks for itself.
Earlier you mentioned about the Taimur Karimi. I'm a member of Afghan community here in DC area. Earlier you mentioned about the flow of development projects money in southern Afghanistan. In view of the past 8 or 9 years, looking at the success and failures, on the part of international donors, are they going to continue more of the same, or they're stepping back to reboot and also consider some other parts of Afghanistan, for instance, central areas or some portions of northern areas, or the same focus on only southern provinces are going to continue in terms of construction developmental projects?
The bulk of the money is going to the south.
And why is that?
Because the theory goes that if you pour in a lot of money and you build people a lot of schools, that they like you better afterwards, and then they don't fight against you. That's, by the way, just a theory. There is nowhere that it has ever proven that actually works. There's actually a very interesting study on the way by Andrew Wilder, I believe, who looks exactly to this effect, whether actually giving people money and building them roads and drilling them wells has any effect whatsoever on their political affiliations or how they view us, or if they are more enticed afterwards not to fight with the Taliban. But that's the theory goes like that, right?
But within the context of Afghanistan, is there a religious, in terms of Shia Sunni, or an ethnic dimension to the focus on only certain areas? Have you come across any such observation?
I don't think so. And on internationals, I don't think there's any discrimination on that level. I think it's simply there are a lot of soldiers. There's going to be 30,000 more this summer. There needs to be money going in alongside that. Supposedly the civilian surge is happening.
But it's also, like what you see in southern Afghanistan is all money channeled through like the military and the government through USAID. And yeah, it's a lot of money, but actually NGOs, which tend to do the far better work, not all of them, but like some of them, are more operating in northern Afghanistan and in central Afghanistan. So
I'm going to take one more question here because the gentleman had his hand up and I didn't see him over here.
Stephen Anderson. I'd like you to comment just briefly on the Operation Marja, not so much on the operation itself, but what is hoped by the ISAF and the United States, what will happen after that. That is the idea of bringing in what's referred to as government in a box, the idea of trying to reestablish the government of Afghanistan with its people. I'd just like to hear comments on that. What do you see in that for that in the future?
As you rightly note, the offensive operations, which we read hundreds of thousands of words about in newspapers and saw lots on the media, that was very much only the start. That was the easy part. You can, with 15,000 soldiers, you can do a lot in